call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call roll, please?
Counselor Bolin?
Here. Counselor
Elliott?
Here.
Counselor Fisher?
Here.
Counselor Grizzle?
Here.
Counselor Reeskamp?
Here.
And Counselor Scott.
Here.
Excellent, thank you. Consent calendar, we have the agenda for today. Any corrections or additions?
I would move for approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent calendar passes. Public comments. The council welcomes all respectful comments regarding the city's business. Citizens may address the council by approaching the microphone, signing in, stating their names and address for the record. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comments to the council. Council may take an additional 2 minutes to respond. The city clerk will accept and distribute comments at a speaker's request. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the regular session. Number one, city manager candidate recruitment. And this will be Gary Marks. Would you like to come up, please? The council asked to have Gary Marks come back. He was a top candidate in our previous search, and he was interested in coming back and talking with us. We had a chance today individually to meet with Gary. Got to meet with Gary and his wife last night, and appreciate you both coming. And had a productive talk today, and I hope the councilors all got a chance to ask some questions. And I wanted to give this opportunity for Gary to ask us questions, and if we had any further questions, and just have a dialogue with Gary and see what comes of that today. So, does any of the councilors have any questions, maybe after you've spoken to them, or anything that you'd like to ask in addition? I had one that I wanted to bring up that one of the questions I did ask you, so you actually did answer it, but I wanted to have this brought back up. And I asked you, what would you do your first week on the job?
Okay.
Would you mind answering that again?
Sure. By the way, thank you all for inviting me over here. It was unexpected, but very pleased to have the opportunity to come and talk to you all again. So thank you very much for giving my wife and I this opportunity. Mr. Mayor, the first week of the job, I would spend a lot of time getting out around, particularly to the staff, going out to all of the various work sites, offices, because I know that not all of them are at City Hall, and trying to first understand what the issues are for Lebanon. I've been a city manager now for over 22 years, so I feel like I have experience to bring to bear, but I don't know much about Lebanon, and I think a wise manager needs to first understand. So I'll be spending not only the first week, but maybe the first several weeks trying to first understand more about the organization and the community, getting out into the community, meeting individuals, and scheduling meetings with the leadership of the various community organizations, sitting down and first listening, and trying to get a sense of who you are as the community of Lebanon. Only then can I feel like maybe some of my experience might be relevant in a context. So that's how I would proceed for those first days on the job.
Good, thank you. Anybody else that would like to?
That ties into a question that I had asked you about 1 year from today. You're on the job 1 year from today. What are the non-negotiable things that need to be accomplished?
Okay. 1 year ago from today, and thank you for asking that question. I like that question. I think once I go through this process of understanding, what I'd like to do is engage the council and by extension the community and staff in a discussion about the vision for this community. Where do we want to go as a community? Clearly, change is on your doorstep and it's already happened some quite extensive, and you have more coming. So I think more than a lot of times in your history, perhaps, you need to know where you want to go. Because the change will happen, and so it'll either happen to you, or perhaps you can shape some of it if you have a vision. So I want to spend some time with a community discussion about putting together that vision of where you want to be 10, 20 years from now. I believe out of that vision will fall some logical goals for the city specifically. Clearly, we're only one organization in the community, but an important one. So a vision for where we want to go, I think, will have a lot to do with the city, and therefore, what are those goals that are implied out of the vision that we obtain through the council, staff, and the community? What we'll do is go through that goal process, set those goals in communication and partnership with our staff. We'll communicate those down into work tasks for the various departments and begin execution of the vision. So a year from now, I would hope that we would have that vision in place, we would understand our goals, and we'd be actually executing on those goals to try to start to see some of the direction come forward that we all desire and want to see. In addition to that, what I told Floyd was that I would like to look at our financial situation and make sure that we're where we want to be with that. I'd like to look at making sure that our budget is completely transparent, that the average citizen who might not be a CPA could have a chance to look at our budget and say, yeah, I get it. That there would at least be the executive summaries or materials available that would help a citizen understand. The budget clearly sets all of the priorities and really should be that central document that is the heart of the organization for the year to come. And therefore, it's vital that all of our citizens who desire to know have an ability to understand where we're going as an organization. Also, that budget should also reflect the goals that we set out of that visioning process I just spoke of. Those should be reflected as priorities in the budget. And so when we get to that end of the first year, I would hope we have the vision in place, goals that we are executing, and make sure that we have our financial house in a condition that we want it. And if we don't have it in the way we want it, that we're at least moving in a direction that is desired by all of the stakeholders. So.
Gary, I know that being a city manager for 20-plus years, that you have had places of employment that had a need for major street improvements, sidewalk improvements, and those kind of things. Would you share a success that you've had in that area, how you funded those projects?
Yes, I will, Wayne. When I was the city manager of Whitefish, Montana, when I arrived, other folks in the Montana area would refer to Whitefish as craters of the moon because that kind of described a lot of the street network in town. And so that was job number one, is we needed to start paying more attention to our streets. So what we actually did it through urban renewal. And we went in and we rebuilt 25%, literally 25% of our street network. And it wasn't just overlays. We went in and we dug down to the dirt and built new base and built new streets with sidewalks and street trees where appropriate. Then we also went into some of our older neighborhood communities and we replaced sidewalks and ended up replacing sidewalks for 80 blocks of our residential area. We did that also through urban renewal. So that was one aspect. And then when I was, even before that, when I was in Heppner, in Eastern Oregon here, my first position as a city manager, the streets there had been neglected for many years. So what we did is we took our gas tax and we used it as a revenue stream to sell a revenue bond. We took the proceeds from that bond and we were able to, in that case, repair. We couldn't dig down like we did in Whitefish, but where we needed to fix base, we did that, and then we resurfaced a lot of the street network and And the change was remarkable. We timed it to understanding we were locking up our gas tax money for a while for the repayment of that bond. We made sure we had adequate resources set aside for the ongoing maintenance of those streets once we got them in a good state of repair. And the citizens responded very well to having nice, smooth streets in their town. So,
Thank you.
Gary, communication is very important to me. How will your style of government, will you be in contact with the managers, and will they know what you want?
oh yeah, and it'll start with day one when I'm out meeting the various department directors and their staffs. Everybody's included in this process. I want to get to know everyone, want to understand their jobs and what they do. So I anticipate that I'll be communicating with the management, I call it the management team, which are the department heads, on a regular basis, particularly after council meetings. It's my practice to have a full management team meeting the day after a council meeting, where we can kind of decompress, if you will, from the events of the council meeting, talk about any directives that are coming out of the council process the night before, and strategizing how we want to go about implementing those directions. I like to do that in a team setting, because before me is a whole slate of municipal experts. They all have skills and knowledge and understandings in their various fields that oftentimes overlap into different fields. And I find that the collective management strategy is usually better than one edict from a person like me. I'm a generalist. It's my job to facilitate these processes. I don't consider myself a grand expert in a lot. I'm an expert in facilitation and bringing people together and coalescing groups together to find solutions. And I'll be expecting to draw some of those solutions from my department heads as we work together. If you come by my office and you always find me in my office, you need to have a discussion with me, because I need to be out and about, especially in a city that has offices or workplaces in varied places. I need to be out at times meeting the employees during their day-to-day duties. There have been a few times when I've gone out and I've slung gravel and tar patching potholes with the crew. That's something I actually enjoy doing at times. So I'll look at opportunities to actually get in there and work with the staff. So.
Okay, thank you.
Every council has somebody difficult to work with. Ours is Wayne. So tell us about that. I mean, you've worked with somebody difficult in a council, and it's a delicate thing. Tell us about your worst counselor.
Oh my gosh. I think I've worked for maybe 150 different council members in my career.
You probably have
So,
some doozies.
Somebody was as bad as Wayne.
well, I had my share of nuts, but my worst one, oh my gosh.
There's a lot.
Pardon me?
Is there a lot?
No, well, I don't know if I want to call them worse. I mean, in some cases, an outlier helps you understand issues that you should be in tune with. So I'm not going to be quick to criticize. I mean, I've had one council member who, when they didn't get their way on a particular employee issue, they quit the council. That was their decision. And sometimes there are things that individuals decide are, you know, the line, you know. But there was a consensus with everyone else, and that person decided to remove themselves. That was probably the worst. I hated to see that happen, because that was a person elected by the community. But, you know, yeah, sometimes you get headaches from those kind of things, but at the end of the day, I have to appreciate that The reason you have 7 members on a council elected by the people is because we want to make sure that there's a variety of experiences, understandings, and even philosophies of how to move the community forward. And I believe that when those things are all coalesced together in a collective fashion, most often you get the better solution.
Didn't I read that you were a city councilor at one time?
I was for the city of Tualatin, Oregon. I was a student and much more idealistic than I am now. I was going to George Fox College in Newburgh and living in Tualatin, and became upset about a planning issue and decided, by God, I'm going to go out and run for office. And I ended up walking to 4,000 doors, talking to people and expressing my vision for the community. Ended up winning against an incumbent, much older gentleman, and ended up serving on the council for 2.5 years until I graduated and was hired by the city of Heppner to be city manager there. So that was a time when Tualatin still had a dog food plant in the middle of town and bad odors, and that was my first exposure to urban renewal, because we tore down the dog food plant, we bought it, tore it down. And if you've ever been to Tualatin in the last decade or couple decades, there's a lake in the middle of it, and there's shops all around it. That's the urban renewal project that I was part of as a council member, and something I'm very proud of, because if you knew about the dog food plant, that was a drastic change.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah. I'm a big believer that an organization reflects the attitude and the spirit of its leader, its leadership. And I also believe that employees are at their best when they feel supported and encouraged by their managers, their leaders, and ultimately the city manager and the council. If you could just discuss a little bit your views on your leadership style and what that will do for Lebanon and how that might affect the productivity of our employees and the spirit of our employees as an organization.
It almost becomes cliche-ish, but I'll use the word collaborative. That pretty much 99% of the time, that's my style. There's a 1% where there's a crisis that you need something else. But most of the time, I would describe myself as a collaborative manager. Again, I've said this before, but I want to draw out the collective wisdom of the people that are around me. And certainly that's my staff. I value them highly. They're talented individuals who all bring their own strengths and experiences to the table, and they need to be valued for the contributions that they give to our community. I can tell you that right now what we do at the City of Ketchum, once a month during a council meeting, we designate one of our employees as Employee of the Month. The mayor calls them up to the front and presents them with a plaque, and then says nice things about them and the accomplishments they've made for the community. And then the next day we push out through our monthly newsletter, which is an electronic newsletter. We push that out with a story in it about that employee. So over time, we've covered a wide swath of the staff. We've heard lots of feedback from the individuals that receive that recognition, and it seems like a small thing, but it's not. It's big. It's huge, because when you're dealing with the human spirit, it's the golden rule. You should treat others as you want to be treated yourself, and I think we all come to the public process wanting to contribute and leave something behind that's better than what we found. And I believe that's true of our employees, too. Yeah, it's a job, but I think that for most people, they want to make a difference, and they want to know that their work is worth something and worth something to somebody other than just themselves. And so I think that as an integral part of leadership, that's what a person like I need to do, and actually enjoy it. Some of my best friends in life are people that I've worked with through the few cities that I've managed. And I anticipate that if I were to come here, have that good fortune, that the same would be true here. So people are important and they need to be valued.
Thank you.
Gary, appreciate you coming again. I want to follow up perhaps a little bit on what Jason asked you about leadership. The city manager role is an executive role, and as opposed to a legislative role, which is what the council does. And if you look at our national politics, even our statewide politics, governors and presidents are the executives. And yet, people in both of those roles historically, very traditionally, and actively take a strong leadership role in terms of pushing an agenda, guiding and directing and influencing. And I'm curious to know your thoughts as to how influential you would desire to be and try to be in helping to form the vision and guide the vision as opposed to simply collaborating with it and collating the vision for this community.
Well, you're right about the executive role, that a huge part of that is the leadership. Now, I will say that there is a fine line difference between an elected executive and an appointed executive. Clearly, as an appointed executive, I first work for the city council, who are elected by the people as the policy makers. Now, with that said, there's still a huge role for an appointed executive to play. You hire an individual like me for my education and experience managing cities. So you should have the expectation that when needed and required, and even when I believe I need to, that I'm going to step forward and provide the ideas and even suggest the direction that we need to go. I can point to several points in my career where I've done that. Most of them happen to be financial. It seems that when you work for municipalities, oftentimes you have money problems. And in those situations, like when I was in Heppner in the 90s, many of you will remember ballot measure 5 and then ballot measure 50 that followed it, and the whole compression concept that came onto the property tax scene at that point. Heppner was the third most impacted community in the state of Oregon, losing 42% of its tax base. I was a brand new city manager, I think on the job for a couple of months when that all started coming down. What that meant for a small rural community like that it actually, as a community, had voted against the ballot measure, was that they would lose a third of their police department, which was one officer, because we had 3. But still, you know, when you have 3 officers and you lose 1, that's huge. We were going to lose the ability to keep our firefighting equipment up to date and what it needed to be to not only protect our citizens, but make sure our volunteer firefighters were safe. Looks like we weren't going to have money for that. Looks like we were going to need to close our small library and probably also shut down our community swimming pool. Well, in a community like that, there didn't seem to be a sense of how we were going to address this, that there was kind of an attitude of, you know, we're sunk. So what I was able to do was, by being creative, just start addressing each one of those issues. What we did was we ended up partnering with the city of Boardman, which is a community in the same county but up by the Columbia River. We partnered with them to form a library district. And through that, we were able to, because they were having some trouble too, we were able to, through the library district, improve the level of service, the operating hours of both libraries, and we had the resources to hire the first professional librarian to serve either of the communities. So we actually improved the service there. We also were able to partner with the local rec district on the swimming pool issue. Long story there, but at the end of the day, we were able to present a proposal to our voters that received very strong support to build a new modern swimming pool, competition level swimming pool, with even some indoor amenities. It was not an indoor pool. We had an indoor swim jet that in the winter when it was cold, you could still go there and swim against the jet. So we passed that, and we shut down the old swimming pool, which probably needed to be shut down anyway for safety's sake. Then on to the fire department. We were overwhelmingly supported by the voters for a measure there to replace fire equipment for a 10-year period. There was police equipment included in that also. And we were able to buy the first fire truck in 25 years to serve that community. And then when we had all of that done, we were able to keep the police staffing hobbled together and able to marshal resources to that point where we were able to maintain the third officer position. So although we lost 42% of our tax base, I felt I was able to give leadership to the community and give them opportunities. Yeah, there was a lot of voting going on, but that voting wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been the vision and the understanding of how to make those things happen and point people in the right direction. Ultimately, yes, it was up to the community whether they wanted to do those things and tax themselves, but they told us they did. And because of that, Heppner, Oregon's a lot better place than it would have been had ballot measure 5 and 42% of their tax base simply been lost. So I feel good about that, and so I think that's one example of where leadership coming from a city manager can be very important.
Thank you.
Gary, in our session this morning, we talked about parks and recreation and what parks mean to communities as potential developers and people looking for a place to retire consider whenever they drive, into a community. You want to talk about your thoughts about the importance of those?
Yeah, I would. Our public spaces are not unlike our homes. Public spaces are places where we share with our neighbors. And what home do you go into and the living room has nothing on the walls and you have wooden chairs, Usually most of us want to make our homes comfortable places. And the same goes for community. As we come together as neighbors in a community, I like to think that we want our public spaces to be someplace where we want to be. I like to think of parks as kind of our playroom. That's where we go when we want to recreate, we want to get together with friends, and we want to experience that thing called community, and places where we can identify with each other and play. A lot of us work really hard, and so it's good for us to have places where we can go and recreate and also engage in physical conditioning activities for health purposes. I think parks are absolutely vital to a community. They say something about who we are and who we want to be as a community. And as a city manager, it'd be my role to help advise the council on the best way to do that, whatever that might be. And I think there probably would be some options. I'm not, like I said, I'm the guy from the outside looking in right now. But if given the opportunity, I think we could have some really productive and even fun discussions on how we can vision our parks going into the future.
Thanks, Gary.
You're fairly articulate, so I'm going to assume you know how to read. My question is more, are you a reader?
Yes.
And what does that look like?
What does that look like?
What's your favorite book?
Frankly, I don't read a lot of fiction, and probably because I'm too serious. I read a lot of history. I just finished a couple books. Jefferson, The Art of Power, which is all about Thomas Jefferson and his life. And also I finished a book on Benjamin Franklin, American Life is what that's called. Just finished an interesting book about the social interaction between Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan during the 80s when one was speaker and one was president. And it was kind of a management leadership analysis of both characters and how they played off each other, which I found fascinating. Just finished that one. It was fascinating. And I'm about to launch into the Sandberg book on Abraham Lincoln. I'm looking forward to that. It's a massive tome, but those are the sorts of things I like. I think you can learn a lot from history and the characters that played in history, so that's what I like to do. I also read a lot of the current news, newspapers. Yeah, I'm in that generation that still likes to hold paper in my hand. I read a lot on my... I have an iPad. I have an iPad and I have a laptop and all that, and I read plenty on those, I assure you. But there's just something about holding a newspaper in your hand or a book.
Yes.
I saw a story the other day on the news about a city somewhere. They'd taken their library completely electronic. don't know. I have a hard time identifying with that. My first job outside of our family business was as a page at the Multnomah County Library in downtown Portland. I would go into stacks and retrieve books, and so I think books are just kind of in my blood. And your library, by the way, is in good hands with me, because I will be their sure advocate.
Well, there's one person in the audience you made very happy.
I think I told her that before when I was here. Didn't seem to help me then either.
Any other questions from council? Gary, do you have any questions of us?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay.
I asked, I think most of you or all of you individually, and I'll ask you as a corporate group, what do you see as the biggest challenge for Lebanon at this point in time?
Jason.
Go ahead, Wayne.
My concern, and I think we as a council are concerned about how we continue to emphasize development in our community and not add to our indebtedness, because we have quite a chunk of indebtedness. And so I think that's our challenge, is to maintain a positive economic development stream that is well thought out, envisioned, planned, and not overburden our citizens. That would be my perspective as a challenge.
And I piggyback on that too, and thinking the vision process is an important part of that, where we actually know where we want to go, and that we get there and we have steps to be able to get there. And I think that's kind of an important part for our community, is to be able to know where we're going and to grow responsibly, so that we're not growing so fast that we don't have infrastructure, we don't have things to help that growth. And I think that's part of the vision process too.
I'd throw in there too, we have great history here. We have families that have been here for multiple generations, and at the same time, you look at the medical campus to the north, and we have new generations moving to this area, and we have a new demographic coming to this area. So we're on this cusp, and I think it's a great place to be. We're on the cusp of something really big, and to me, the challenge is, which step is the correct next step to take us where we want to go, where we can preserve the history we have and respect that history and honor that history that we have in this town, while still moving forward into the new world out there. I think we're in a great spot to do that. And like I told you in our talk, I see where I want to be, and where I want it to be for my family, and I just need someone to help me get to that place. And someone that's going to sit in your position is that person. They're the ones that are going to facilitate us moving forward, and they're going to answer the questions that we have of, how do we do this? We know where we want to go. How do we get there now? That's the challenge for me. So
Thank you.
I think another part of the challenge is expanded dialogue. I'm a little old-fashioned. I like the town hall meeting kind of concept. And finding a way to effectively do that. It's kind of depressing sometimes when you go out of your way and one person shows up or two, but I'd like to see us continue to try to find warm ways to communicate, so we get a broad spectrum of inputs. And the other, I think, with any organization, is keeping all fronts moving. We can get so focused on a handful that we lose some, or they get less than their share, or less thought process, or we may even have the illusion we've got it together, but it's because of our lack of thought, not appropriate attention. And like I say, I think we're all faced with that in our various organizations we're in. So as a city, I think it's the same.
Thank you.
In the last 5 years, we've seen immense growth here in our city, which is great, and I'd like to see it continue. But we've got a couple of items that we've got to face up to also. Is a water treatment plant that we have to build here as soon as we can. And also, the city hall needs to be replaced, which I don't think we need to do that tomorrow, but in the future, we need to take a look at that. But I'd like to see the development continue. We've got the Veterans Home coming along, and the center out there, everything is looking great. I think we're going to have another college building within it'll probably start it within a year, I believe. And I was told last night that the hotel will begin in April. They'll have the groundwork on that. So we got these things to look forward to.
Gary, in terms of challenges, just about everybody here has spoken in terms of vision of some form or other as the challenge goes, and I completely concur. I think that identifying a vision that is both broad enough to be adaptable and flexible going forward and narrow enough to be very focused is going to be a very difficult challenge. It's not something easy to do. And it's easy to sit around here and talk about how we need to create a vision. It's a very difficult thing to turn around and actually do it in a way that the community can truly own as a community. So to me, I think truly identifying that vision and embedding it in the DNA of all of us is going to be the biggest challenge.
For me, it's hands down leadership. I think we've had somewhat of a leadership void. We have a really dynamic staff in place. So whoever comes in faces, I'm fairly confident, very competent people that are just waiting to be inspired by the right leader. And obviously we have the best council on the planet. So I think we just need leadership. We need to be inspired. There has been a real energy in Lebanon. You know, when things are going right, you can feel it when you go out to get a gallon of milk. You know, it's just everything's rolling, everything's great, everybody's happy, everybody feels good because we've got so much going on. But it doesn't take very long to take a few steps back in that process. And so somebody that inspires the best in our other leaders in the city and makes them want to do more.
Rebecca, I'm just curious, is that you get that feeling when you get the gallon of milk or when you get the bottle of wine?
Well, okay. Okay, the champagne.
Actually, I guess I don't have another question, but I would like to kind of springboard off what you said, Rebecca. The energy that you talk about, that's evident to me, and I'm sure it's evident to other people outside of the community, and that's why I think in some ways you're seeing some of the growth that you're seeing. Lebanon has become a place that people want to be because you offer a unique lifestyle that's not easy to find anymore. And so all of that is kind of, you didn't ask me this question, but I'll answer it anyway. Why am I interested in coming to Lebanon? Well, I'm interested because I think Lebanon is an exciting place to be in 2014 with all that has happened so far and the potential it represents and projects into the future. I think it's a great place where actually I can come home. I'm a native Oregonian, and I've shared that with some of you earlier. Native Oregonian need to come home for family needs that should be addressed. But very conveniently, there's Lebanon, and it's right smack dab where it needs to be in relation to my family, but also there's some exciting things happening here. I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to be part of providing the leadership that I've been able to hone over my 22 years of managing cities and bring that here, marry it up with some of the potential that you have here, and together as a team, both council level, staff, and through the broader community, move this place forward in some very positive ways. And it's very exciting to me as a manager and also as an artist. I always share this with anybody who's considering hiring me, that the artist in me is me. When you hire me, I don't leave my art in my studio. It's something I do at night late, sometimes early in the morning. It's something that I bring to work. It's a creative energy and just a passion, if you will, that I instill into my work. My work is very important, and the things I accomplish through my work are part of my collection of artworks. So that's just part of who I am, and the passion kind of spills over into the whole personal relationship thing, valuing people and wanting to work together as human beings to make the exciting things happen for our community. So you didn't ask the question, but I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Anything else? Gary, thank you very much for coming back. You and your wife both making the trip back here to Lebanon. We really appreciate it. I know it was very short notice, and it was awesome that you could make it in such a quick time, and we do appreciate it. At this time, unless you had anything else, Gary, we'll go ahead and move on with the meeting, and we just have a couple items we have to clear up, and then we'll go into executive session after that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up would be items from council. Is there anything councils would like to bring up? Okay, and lastly, we have one more opportunity for public comments. Would anybody from the public like to speak? Go ahead. Okay, if you please sign in for me.
Okay, I'm Jan Bucco, and I live outside the city, but I'm very concerned about, we talk about development in Lebanon, and most of the development is happening around the outside of the town. Jason, you talked about the historical value of this community. However, we have a lot of buildings in the downtown area which are owned primarily by people not in the downtown community. So I don't think that those people appear to have the same pride that we do about the historical buildings. I would like to know if there is a way, and if the new possible city manager has a way, to get money to help develop those buildings, help restore those buildings, because it is proven in various different studies that vital downtown communities are stronger as a whole. So, in order to do that, we've got our farmers market going, we've got a lot of new businesses in the downtown area, but we do not have historical districts. Main Street programs cannot happen without a historical district being designated. A lot of the homeowners outside out in the community with beautiful historical homes, you wouldn't know they were historical homes. They don't have plaques on them that say Ralph Scroggins' home. We have a beautiful mill next door, which is not in a historical district, which could be able to get grants. So I guess my question is, if I'm allowed to ask him a question, is there a way to promote, revitalize, and get the community excited about the historical buildings that we need to also develop, and not continue to develop farmland and continue to develop outside the Lebanon city limits?
Would you mind, Gary, at this point? I hadn't planned on doing that, but that would be an appropriate question.
I have a question afterwards. Oh, I'll let you, yeah, please, you first.
Okay, I'll draw on a couple of my experiences with historic downtown buildings. Both in Heppner and in Whitefish, we had some wonderful old buildings that were not in the best of condition. And in Heppner, what I did is I was able to secure a grant at the time through the Oregon Economic Development Department that we used to leverage interest on loans. We partnered with some of our local banks to set up a program and offered it to the owners of the buildings downtown, that if they would execute projects to restore the facades of their historic buildings, that we would use the grant money that we had received to pay the interest on the loans that they would acquire through local banks. And that was a roaring success. We had several buildings. In fact, it almost became a kind of a status thing for some of the building owners downtown, because they saw some of their neighbors restoring some of their buildings, and gosh, maybe I should do the same thing. And it was kind of a domino thing where we had several of the buildings. And I won't use the word updated, because I think that sometimes updating can be, can exercise some of the worst travesties to some of the old architecture. But I'm talking about where we go in and we try to restore buildings to their original intended appearance or glory, if you will. So then when I went to Whitefish, I repeated that same program. In that case, I think we identified some money out of our urban renewal district for downtown, and we used that and partnered with banks again. The program worked again. So I know it was a successful program, and in the end, unbelievably, everyone paid the loans back, and the buildings looked a whole lot better. So like the lady who just spoke, I feel pretty passionate about the old buildings because, and in fact, you know what? The first interview I had with you 6 months ago, I spent some time talking about this. Your downtown and also your adjacent historic residential district are so very important to who you are as Ketchum. And as all the development is going on, I would hate to think that you would lose touch with who you are and where you have come from. And the best way to do that, I believe, is to put in the resources necessary to maintain and restore those wonderful, I'll call them works of art, that are some of the buildings in your downtown.
Thank you, Gary.
I would add real quick, too, that I know a lot of people that would love to have participated today, but they're at a conference for that kind of thing. I mean, Lebanon is not unique. The absent, you know, the out-of-town owners, out-of-state owners of buildings, it's a problem statewide, and so there are people that I know at a conference.
And I have worked
Trying
with the chamber a little bit on some of the ideas that we could do to get some of the downtown businesses.
Yeah, it's
to
a
take a little pride, the owners
Yeah.
that are out of state and out of town. Yes.
I'm the other half of that. That is my wife, Jan. I'm Pete Bucco. I'm a board member of the Scroggin Mill over here. And I understand that we used to have a historic commission in this town, and it disbanded for whatever reason. I do not care. I think it would be very beneficial if we consider putting together a historic commission again in this town of concerned citizens who are interested in preserving the history of this town. I moved here in 2003, but this is my home now, and I love the community I live in, and I'm seeing lots of very positive changes. I don't see arguing at the city council meetings anymore. I see a lot of people smiling and happy to be here, and I see some very positive things going on, but we don't have a museum in this history to showcase just how important this town was, is, and will be. And I think it's a shame that we don't have that museum, but we have the space next door. We need to inspire the people of this community and of this county just how important that is. We, with a historic district, put a sign on the highway. With a historic mill, put a sign on the highway. It brings tourism dollars into this area. We have room for a museum. We have room for commercial space, meeting space. There will be a city park with a stage that we can hold events. I mean, it'll help to revitalize this neighborhood. We've got lots of different things that we've got on our slate that we want to do. We have an upcoming chili feed on February 8th. I've got tickets right here. Roger Nyquist, one of our county commissioners, has already committed to be there. So I can't think of a better opportunity for any one of the city councilors to be able to get some time talking to Roger about issues that are going on in this town and what the county can do to help out in this community.
Pete, was there a historic commission when you first came here? I'm trying to remember I don't remember.
Got absorbed into the planning department, I think.
I think it was part of a way to be more prudent with finances. And I don't know why or how, it doesn't matter at this point. I think having a volunteer community board that is completely, I mean, I'm not asking for money. The mayor has graciously written a letter indicating that the project next door is something that he approves of. And having that kind of support in the community is critical to us. I mean, I believe that we're in Ward 3. And I would love nothing more than to see our own city councilor come to this chili feed, kind of twisting your arm a little bit.
I'm off. A fireman love chili, so give me a ticket.
But I've got tickets here, they're $5 a piece, there's a silent auction or the 50/50 raffle.
Come sweep floors with us.
And I really would enjoy to have each and every one of you come to the chili feed and enjoy some time with people from the community. Again, I mean, I think it would be critical, and I'm a student of history. I grew up in Corvallis, went to school at Oregon State, I lived in Albany, but I keep moving further east. And I think my wife and I have found a nice area that we intend to spend the rest of our days in. So.
Pete and Jan, too. I just want to thank you guys for your work. I think the efforts that you've put into the mill in the last 6 months have been very noticeable, and I've seen it, and I've seen the community outreach. I've seen the direction your board's going, and I'm very impressed, and I think that that's very positive, because I want to see that go and not just be a shell building over there that does nothing, and I think that would be nice to have a museum. So I am also in support of some type of a heritage or some type of a committee like that. And I know we did have it. I know I see it on the budget. There's like a little $100 there, I think, that still sits there for that committee. So I don't, I just saw that on the budget. I asked
We got
about that.
$100.
And so, yeah, but no, I think that might be something we need to look at. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you very much for your time. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you listening to me.
Yes. And the mill will talk to you.
And the mill will talk to you.
If you haven't seen the Facebook page, you don't know what I'm talking about. Anyone else from the audience like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and we'll move into executive session in about 5 minutes. And that means everybody will need to clear the chambers, please,
Means you're crying.
except the media.
Out.
Okay, we'll adjourn the executive session and move into public session. And at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion if we'd like to move forward with the with negotiations with Gary Marks for employment.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the mayor to move into negotiations with Gary Marks for employment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. And at this point, are there any other councilor comments? And meeting's adjourned.